Welcome to the Fractured Families Podcast. Hi, I'm Charity, a dedicated parental alienation coach. I'm here to support and advocate for families navigating the challenges of high conflict divorces and custody disputes.
And I'm Jeremy, whose personal journey has highlighted the devastating effects of parental alienation and coercive control on family dynamics.
Together, we're here to shed light on the struggles many families face, offering insights, strategies, and hope to those seeking justice and healing.
On each episode, we'll explore real-life stories, expert advice, and practical solutions to help rebuild and strengthen the bonds that hold families together.
Whether you're personally affected or looking to understand more about these complex issues, you're not alone. We're here to walk this path with you.
Please join us as we navigate the complexities of family law, sharing inspiring journeys of resilience, and advocate for meaningful reform in the pursuit of family unity.
This is the Fractured Families Podcast, where every voice matters and every story counts. Hi, I'm Charity with the Fractured Families Podcast. Thanks for joining. I have with me today Eli. He's going to share his story of alienation, the impact the church had on it, and where he's at today. Thank you for being a guest. Eli, why don't you get us started? Tell us a little bit about what you're going through.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we met in the church. We got married. She was 18. I was about 21. She wanted 5 kids. I wanted 3. We couldn't add, so we got 10. And it was a wonderful life. The fact that you're basically right out of college. There wasn't, obviously, money is always going to always be tight. Family, they were kind of leery being young and married, but overall things are really good for the past, obviously, past 18 years. Now we were married 23 years, but we do have 10 children. The issue started to rise probably around 6 years ago when my oldest was about 16, 17. There were things that are going around in the family that I didn't understand. I knew a lot of it had to be with my past actions, like being a total workaholic, not prioritizing the family, prioritizing my relationship with Christ, the church, the whole bit. And as we started to kind of deal with those things and get my priorities in order and our priorities as a family in order, there were other things that started to come to the top. So during that time, my ex-wife we were seeking counseling. We were getting counseling from our pastor. And this wasn't the first time we got counseling from the pastor. We were coming from another church that also said, hey, you got a large family. You might want to go into this particular church that has a lot more children, so you can kind of have more of a community that's more like-minded. And that was a good move. We appreciated that. And so we continued the counseling. During the counseling, we met with, initially was going to be with an older pastor and his wife. And then we slowly went to the senior pastor, or I would say the preaching pastor. And I didn't know at the time, and again, hindsight is 2020. You get completely caught flat-footed in this whole thing. But I didn't know at the time that there were things that were happening behind the scenes that no one really knew what was going on. And those things were like these things of insecurity, this anxiety, unjustified anxiety, talk about being dangerous, talk about being careless. My ex-wife, started saying things like, well, he's got trauma from his childhood. She's not a medical doctor, but then she's naming me as PTSD, ADHD, PTSD-C, bipolar on the spectrum, and I'm thinking, no. Now I love my ex-wife because she was always about getting into focusing on children as well as focusing on their health. So when it came from her, it did carry some weight. Looking back, it carried maybe a little more too much weight, definitely for sure. But when those accusations started to land, and now I'm starting to seeing that she's now using those accusations as justification for the children not acknowledging me, dismissing me, saying things like, well, your father refused to get help, so you don't have to listen to him. That was an actual statement. Or things like things very similar of that vein that were happening in front of the children. I told you can't talk like that from the kids, and we're seeking counseling during this time. But, I ended up just biting the bullet and saying, "You know what? I'm just gonna have her I'm gonna have her be quiet. I'm gonna just get checked by a psychiatrist, by a doctor. I want a guy who's gonna have all those things, who's dealt with all those PTSD, all those the alphabet there, and also deal with them you deal with them, a trauma. We all have our level of trauma that we're dealing with. Me and my childhood, it was a very rough childhood. There was some physical abuse. I've never physically abused my children, but there was those things that happened in the marriage and in a relationship that she would accentuate. She would come to finally lie about, but things that you use that small nugget of truth to justify why she was doing what she was doing. And that got worse and worse. The psychiatrist saw me. He's like, "Yeah, you're not. He said all those things. You're not those things. And he literally said, "Well, respectfully, she needs to stay in her lane." His words, and it felt good. At the same time, I didn't realize at that point that I'm actually seeing him not for me, but for her. And then you got the gaslighting, of course. After that, I started realizing, well, what can I seek? What benefit can I have talking to the psychiatrist? And I started realizing the issues that I was struggling with was actually my mother. She ended up passing away from dementia and Alzheimer's, but I was struggling with that. So looking back, I realized that she saw that and she used that, maybe not even maliciously, but as a way to say somehow put some footing, put some credibility to whatever claims were. Now, all those claims that she made were unfounded. But again, when I talk to fathers and other people who are going to this, it's those small nuggets of truth to justify the large, overreaching lie. I mean, I working with a counseling with the pastors. We need to do this, you need to do this, and then I find myself literally, basically, auditioning for the job as a father. Like, you can't be the father because X, Y, Z. And I'm thinking, no, I'll do X, Y, Z. And immediately you see where that just gets unhealthy. There are times where, she was sending the children to keep an eye on me to see what I'm doing with the younger children. And I was thinking, why are you checking up on me? Um, Never been arrested, don't do drugs. I've never been drunk, no warrants. I think the worst thing I ever got was probably a speeding ticket and expired registration. We kept on going, living and working with the counseling. And this is where I think about 6 years ago, where now things are starting to take a darker turn. There's starting traction to what she's doing. I stopped working on Sundays, made it a family day. And then next, there's claims of, well, the children don't feel safe. And that became, obviously, for those in the space, knowing, wait a minute, that's where it begins. To the point where now the children don't feel comfortable with you. Let's take separate cars so they can they can not be angry, or it can work out their feelings. You have to validate their truth. You have to acknowledge the fact that they're a other person, individual, feeling those things. Now, at that point, I'm not going to say in any measure that I was some sort of angel here. We did have arguments. We did have fights, not physical fights, but just deep arguments, about our roles, about our functions, and so there was validity, and that's kind of like what made me kind of go along with the ride. Next now the children aren't even opening the door to me when I got the groceries at the front door, and that's okay and allowed because their mother said so. Now I have children. Literally, my second oldest literally said, "Shut up, Dad." I'm like, "What?" Like, we're the like, you can't say that. What my I came home one day, and their oldest one was gone, like, gone. She's six at the time. She was 16, almost 17, or just turned 17, and she's gone from the home. And I said, where is she? And and she says, well, she decided she wanted to go help her aunt, my wife's sister, to while she's going to pregnancy. And I'm thinking, okay, when you gonna pick her up? Well, no, she's gonna stay there a couple days. I look back and I kick myself because I didn't realize that was part of the 17 strategies that that are there. And when it comes to parental understanding parental alienation, um, I fought it. a little bit, but then she justified it with saying, "Well, listen, she's only going for a couple days, maybe a week, just until they have the baby, and then she'll come back." I'm thinking, and during that time, the two of you can come together. And I'm thinking, I'm also, by accepting that premise, I'm accepting the fact that there is something actually there when there wasn't nothing there. And the thing that was there should have been, it could have been addressed. Like, for instance, a difference of opinion. But remember, if I'm dealing with my child and then you have an alienating parent, they're going to side with the child, and therefore now the issue becomes me. That the whole triangulation there. She never came back home. She ended up turning 18, and she ended up moving on. In fact, she ended up staying with her father. Uh, and at the time, I was still thinking, I don't like this. She's sleeping on his couch, and I'm thinking, wow, she's just there. And I'm thinking, yeah, but we're working through things. And our pastors at the time, they're not understanding what the full gravity, what's going on. They don't understand enmeshment, parental alienation. They don't understand necessarily what's going on so much with the judicial system and the family court system and how broken it is. Custody issues. Yes, there's divorce, and as I said in the email, there's a lot of my work has been just getting involved with other pastors, saying, educating them. Hey, by the way, just to get just for 411. But when she's there, she's slowly kind of, we're still dealing with things at the house, and I'm not allowed to be in the house, my house, our house, when she decides to visit. And I agreed to that. But I agreed to that because I said, well, she just needs some time and some space. The cat was out of the bag on this one day when, after leaving the house so she could come visit home with her brothers and sisters, and my ex-wife was having interactions, communications, calling, texting. Now, we're good. I didn't mention, the schooling, of her using schooling to put a divide against us, saying, "Hey, we need to make sure she's not focusing too much on the phone and social media, and that's getting a lot of her attention." And so I says, "We're gonna let's put some parental controls on that." And she says, "Well, see, you're controlling. You're not trusting her. That's her property. She's living with us. And then she ended up just, there was a time where I was paying for the phone, but my ex-wife, behind her back, ended up bought her a new phone in the house. Um, the what was there? I mean, there's so many things. There were times where, like, we have certain particular convictions about, like, proms and stuff like that. And, well, I say no to certain things. She says yes, and she takes the entire family to do the things that I said no to and that she said yes to. But more importantly, and this is where parental relation comes involved, is that she tells the children, "Don't tell dad." And again, I'm looking at the 17 strategies actually today, because I have to write something for the court hearing coming up, and I'm going all these things, and it's kind of like, it's it burns me, it saddens me, and enrages me. There's so many emotions because I wish, but it was hard. After that, what ended up happening is, my daughter's out the house. My younger children are now starting to get affected. And what I start seeing is that now my second youngest, she's doing the whole closing the door in my face, not letting me come into the room. All of a sudden, there's a sense of security. Now the children are spying on me when I'm interacting with one of the children. The children then go report to mom. Now mom is the official adjudicator for what's going on, what's right and what's wrong in the house. And at this time, our pastors are hearing this, or they're having they're hearing this through the emails, the exchanges, through me talking to them. And at the same time, our pastors saying there's a certain level of bitterness and anger that she is having. And again, as pastors, seeing it more from the spirit's perspective, uh, things are a little different now that we've come this far. Uh, she would normally go over to her parents' house, into her father's house, and she would just spend time there when she was, quote unquote, upset. She would, and I remember one time, like, her father, he had, like a medical issue, and so she went over there, but it wasn't anything particularly big. And I said, he lives 45 minutes away. He has his wife, his 2 daughters, he has the in-laws, son-in-laws, he has all those people in those community that know him, that love him because he's really popular within the community, and we only have you. He says, "We need you here." And immediately she twisted that saying like I'm being misogynist, hyper-patriarchal, tyrannical, dictatorial, and, I said, "I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm just telling you you're needed here. We need you here." And she says, I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what I'm doing." And she just leaves. That happened a couple times, not so much the that verbal interaction, but more of that her leaving. Uh, what I didn't know at the time was she's going to her family and constructing a narrative of some sort that is without the opposite side. As a Christian, what you find is that, like Proverbs 18:17 or 16:17 or 18:17 or so, it's the first one is to prove his case always seems right till another comes and examines him, or with the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, solely a fact should be established, basically. And so you saw that I didn't know this was going behind the scenes. I'm thinking, oh, she's going to spend time, celebrate birthdays, whatever the case is, and so they have extended family. I'm like, fine, okay, no problem. Um, One day she left. This is around August 5th, and she never came back home. Uh, about August 5th, she left. August 8th, she filed a restraining order. I got the restraining order, and I tell you, I mean, and I never thought that in 10 seconds, your life can completely change. I literally left the house, went to Home Depot. I'm in the parking lot getting phone calls, whatever what's going on. I think, okay, that's probably spam. Turns out I finally listened to the voicemail. It's someone, state marshal or so. I'm thinking, oh, I paid my taxes. Like, okay, call him up. And then he just drops the bomb on me. It's like, she filed the restraining order, and I'm not allowed in the house. I'm not allowed guns, no guns, 100 feet from the house, the location of with the residences, not to contact, call anyone. Completely blindsided. And I just break down, call bawling. And immediately I call my pastors. And I tell them, this is what just happened. And I said, I don't want to go back home. Well, I can't go back home unless I have a police escort into my home. Mind you, I still got stuff in the crock pot cooking, you know, like, like it's still warm. And I'm, I'm like at a loss. I'm like, calling my friends, like, I got a couple guys in the church or, hey, this is what's happened. What should I do? And I know one guy who's like, yeah, it's just, you need to lawyer up, bro. You need to lawyer up. Um, So I wanted to go back to the house, not during the day, because we had a tenant that she just had a heart issue, and she got away from that lifestyle of cops and everything, and where we live is we're like down the street from all the craziness, if you will. So I didn't want her to see the cops. So we ended up going there around 11 o'clock at night, and I had my pastors, a deacon, I had another brother from the church. They escorted me into my home, confiscated what they wanted to confiscate. I left with left my own house with a hamper. I literally still have the hamper. There are things that are forever embedded in you from that night and from that experience that I just keep around, just so I could not to re-traumatize myself per se, but more like just to kind of remember what's going on. Um, uh, that night, I had to go to work. It was actually we had inventory at 4 o'clock. Left my house, had my hamper in the car, and I'm thinking I got to start working about 3 o'clock, so I might as well just go to work and sleep. I am completely out of it. I mean, tears, everything. Like, I don't know which end is up. And I go to my job, sleep in the parking lot, and then oh my goodness. And then I go to work, do the inventory, come back. My family finds out about this. I tell my family. thank God for my sisters. As much as sisters and brothers fight and everything, they ended up helping me get back on my feet. Like, I have a younger sister and an older sister, and yes, we all disagree a lot and we fight a lot, but we love each other hard, you know. But when my older sister, especially, actually both my sisters, but most especially, when they found all the craziness that was written in there, they were PO'd. I mean, they were like, "This is this." Like, they gave me the riot act because my mother, like their mother, they don't trust anyone, even if their own brother, you know. So here I am, like, the next day, like, sitting there, and one's on the phone, the other one's in front of me, and they're saying, "What about this? What about this?" So I'm like, "No, it's not true." But they really helped me help me get through that part. And it also I didn't really it also kind of cemented the fact that this wasn't so much an issue of me, you know. First, you got to deal with, like, the idea that you were just you were just accused of X, Y, and Z. You know, and going to court the first time and never been to court in a court hearing, and then, inside the struggle of, like, does everyone know that I'm guilty? Do you want to tell everyone? No, it's not true. Nothing to see here. The insecurity and yeah. So my family, they were there. I come to find out 3 months later is that most fathers that are in this, they actually tell you, don't rely on your family, which is true. You should never really rely on your family because you exasperate them. Because what you're doing is you're telling them, hey, this is what's happening. They know what's wrong, but they don't know what to do. And so they felt like, what am I supposed to do? And after a while, they just get tired of hearing you. And they actually just shut you off, if not turn against you. Uh, Yes, that's what it was. I think of it. Yeah. Well, yeah, they definitely did that. Definitely did that. But
It's a
eh,
balance. It's a balance for sure.
yeah, yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, there were some valid points because there were some blind spots that I have. You're not going to go through that and all of a sudden be completely perfect in everything you do. But like right now, if I call them, I think I know that my sisters, they've attended a lot of the hearings with me. One of them has, the other one's in another state. But But yeah, that became my new life. What happened? Well, I fought the restraining order. I found out you could put the next day. No, fought the restraining order. Let me put it this way: first hearing, I get completely destroyed. I'm in court. I'm crying in front of the judge. I'm a total mess. And she's not even there. She's coming in because she's alleging all this abuse, so she's on like a video thing. And I'm just like, Your Honor, this ain't true. My sisters and we spent hours and hours filing, going line by line through restraining order, bringing evidence and witnesses. And I've never been to court. I don't know what this stuff. I mean, I've seen things on TV. That's it. They ended up finalizing that restraining order 6 months. The next day, I'm on the butcher block. I'm a butcher by trade. I've been doing that for about 30 years. Um, so then, so yeah, I'm on the butcher block, and I said, "Nah, there's something else. This ain't right." So I told my boss I'm gonna take a long lunch, and I went to the court. I think I went with my my Miesmacher. I don't remember, but yeah, but I went there and I said, "What can you do?" A court clerk, obviously they can't give you legal advice, but they said you could file a motion to vacate. Well, I did that, and I did that more than apparently I should have. So I did that, got rejected, then it got sent. Then my fortunes to vacate end up getting moved to a different court because there are so many of them. And what I started doing is including in the motion to vacate actual parts of her restraining order that were false, and then I provided a rebuttal. Um, that didn't do anything, and then they just said you're shut off from entering anymore. Uh, I during the I had 4 court hearings to fight the restraining order. Then they shut me down on that. 6 months later, the court at the court hearing, the judge forgot his laptop. Yeah, it was one thing. Yeah, I think he forgot his laptop, and yeah, he forgot his laptop, and then he said, "No, this is because you ordered." He said most cases have 3 or 4 motions to vacate. You have 38, sir. So this is a non. This is non. Listen, Christy. If you have children, you're gonna fight like hell for them. Okay, so I'm like, if this is my one ticket, let's go for this, right? It doesn't work. But that's also something I noticed with a lot of fathers I hear is like, they're hanging on that shred of whatever evidence, like they're like, is this the day I will be vindicated? Is if I just get this to the court, and I don't have a lawyer, she ended up getting a legal counsel. I hadn't, and so I stood no chance. The court ended up extending the restraining order for from 6 months to another 6 months. I kept fighting it. Uh, uh, the 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 restraining order was extended another year. That was because, believe it or not, she left the church, left us, left the family, well, left me, the family went. And from from what I hear, she went back to her old church. Guess who was the senior pastor of the old church? Her father. Guess who was the children's church leader of that church? Last time I checked, it's her mother. It's like, I'm telling you, it's like spiritual organized crime, and and they've only heard one side, and they don't know the other side. Unbeknownst to me, this ends up being a silver bullet divorce. Uh, you know, I didn't. I didn't know. I said, how does she must have been planning this, and come to find out that we had a guy come over the house to do some work, and he's like, "Yeah, how's your wife doing?" I'm thinking, "Well, you didn't hear." It's like, "No, I kind of figured that after I told him what happened." And he said, "I know that because your wife was talking to my wife, and my wife is doing it to me." And I was like, we're like, "Oh, okay, I got it. This is a thing." Um, and so that became kind of like an eye opener for me. I started attending, kept on attending the church, and then I then I left the church. I left the church to find answers, and went to other churches because it's just way, way, way too painful to go to the same church, seeing the kids. I used to play with my kids and that stuff, and it's still very hard. Um, but I mean, I got thrown out of court. The emotions of contempt, a ton of those. I was facing incarceration because of arrearage, uh, and this whole thing, I'm realizing I have to do a couple things here. And my deacon he said, you have to first get yourself right, fix yourself, then you're gonna fight for yourself, fight for your kids, and then fight for your marriage. Um, Last year, she ended up filing for divorce because the restraining n- orders were never dealt with in false allegations. Those carried on post divorce. So now I haven't seen my children or can make contact with them in 997 days. No one's counting. It's going to be 3 years this August. Uh, it has been a complete wild ride. You know, the amount of you know the up and downs, the hills, the valleys, the emotional, the anxiety, the stress. My interaction and my work has been just educating myself. It's weird because you get caught flat-footed, but then when you start seeing something because you want to fight for your kids, then you start drinking from a fire hose, you know. You start listening to you and Fractured Families podcast and Richard Garza and then the Alienation Project and Steve Mayeda and all these other guys, the good, bad, or indifferent, right? Anything to just give me understanding to what's going on in my life and why don't I see my children. And, that's been my journey. My journey has been extremely hard. And I mean, I've only been able to be able to talk to it probably about a year and a half. The first year or so, maybe a year and a half, and obviously, the first year total was like I wasn't in a position to talk about it without completely breaking down. Um, as it stands right now, we are looking at a hearing in about a week. The court got a new judge. The judge ended up rotate every 7 years, and what I found out was that the thank the Lord, and all I got people say Amen. All right, but what ended up happening is the judges the judges rotate. I was facing possible incarceration because of the arrearage, and there was a whole story behind that because not having a lawyer, I didn't realize there were things I was paying for I didn't have to. At that hearing, the public defender that was representing me just for the incarceration part of it said, "Yeah, you got one of the worst judges there." And the new judge, started hearing what I was saying, and so this hearing is actually me telling the judge, pounding on the table there, saying, "Your Honor, There are lies, there is slander, there is cheating. We can deal with those right now. And the reason why I keep on pointing that out is because the current custody orders are based on those false allegations. And he says it's in the best interest of the children that we deal with that, or what's still going to be repeated and into the post divorce custody issue. Which what I find out is that's exactly what happens. They can get away with a civil bullet divorce, lies and slander, and then that's going to follow through with the co-parenting program that you have. And so I'd rather just hit it hard and get it out the way. I had to communicate to guardian ad litem because guardian ad litem uh, come to find out that he wasn't educated in parental alienation, and that kind of came up in court in the most awkward of senses for him, I think. But he has been kind of receptive. He's it seems like he's over. Seems like he's got a huge workload. Uh, the uh, the thing that got traction to my case for me was I ended up putting a YouTube channel just because I was talking to pastors, and I realized all these pastors have no clue what's going on in the family court system, and they're not engaged with it. And whether it's children involved or not, but particularly if children are involved, meaning they have no clue what's going on with the family court system and if their parishioners, if they're adults who are embroiled in this family court and custody and all this other stuff, the children take a back seat. Well, let the professionals handle them. And so now the pastors don't recognize, hey, there's a lot more that's at stake here. There's a lot more going on, and that the children are an essential part of it. They're the ones with literally no voice. And so when I wasn't at our church, I gave our pastors that website as a kind of as a reference, as a bookshelf to have them look at some things to kind of familiarize. And then they ended up calling me back. We asked for a meeting, and they ended up saying, "Okay, we're going to reach out to her." She never responded because she's done with them. She got what she wanted from those people. Um, but but as it stands right now, the current thing is to really get ready for this court hearing to be able to bring to this court hearing, evidence, testimony that was been sitting literally in my briefcase for the past 3 years. And
So, are you still self-represented?
yeah, pro se the entire time. Pro se
Okay.
the entire time. I think in some ways, if I kind of agree, I think Robert Garza, he was more of a pro se guy himself, right? And he was
It was,
advocating for
yeah.
that. And I could kind of see that if you have so let me put it this way. During this time, I saw I've been with fathers who have dealt with addictions, who are homeless. There was a time when I wasn't living at home, and I chose not to live at home because, well, one, because it was a violation of restraining order, but two, I didn't want to leave it in someone's house or my sister's house because I knew seeing them hug and kiss their family would not be good to my mental health. So I found other places to stay at, and I found a lot of guys who were in the same situation, and they were addressing it with the ability or I say the education that they had. And then I've also seen fathers that are really wealthy, and they're dealing with it. So when I look when I look at a father who wants to say, hey, I want to start represent myself, you can kind of tell, like, what do you want to do? Are you willing to put the work in? Are you willing to understand, the five, when you say parentalation, do you know what that means? Are you just throwing it out there as a talisman that hopefully the judge is gonna pick up on that, or are you willing to understand, the five factor model, the Sarantine strategies, the 8 symptoms that children have? Are you willing to go through that work and be able to write out your own case? And for the most part, a lot of them don't. A lot of them are really I'm angry at the state and I'm angry at the judge. And I said, yeah, you probably want to just get a lawyer because you're not, that's not going to help you much. Me, I don't have the money for a lawyer. So it's like, if I got to learn Chinese, sister, I'm going to learn Chinese.
It's, being pro se, I feel like I'm sitting in on court cases and talking with parents and supporting parents who go to court. Only you are gonna fight for yourself as hard as you are. Every lawyer, what I really found is that regardless of how great they are, and some are better than others for sure, But at the end of the day, they're gonna be in front of that judge again. They're gonna be in front of that counsel again, right? They have to tiptoe around those environments because there's gonna come a day where they're gonna confront those people again. So they're never gonna fight for your case the way you do. But it is actually very well known that judges do typically give pro se litigants a harder time as well. They expect you to know the law as well as your counterparts, which is just not possible because you didn't go to law school. But I do think from a fighting perspective, you're going to be the most passionate. And to your point, bringing in science based information so the judge can reflect upon it and look at it and not just throw things out that have no foundation is going to really help them in making the right choices for you.
Yeah, yeah, that is definitely key is being able to communicate to the judge using their jargon in the way that they understand that's on the record. One of those videos go hard on the best interest of the child principle. And granted, I'm dealing with Christian pastors and having them get engaged in the family court in my situation and the situations that they find in their churches. But at the same time, understanding and respecting that it is a different jurisdiction that's outside the church, and so they having to learn and be familiar with the ins and outs of how that works out. I don't I don't think that that okay. People ask me, so do you think the family court needs to be abolished? I think that it's good in theory, but because of the unchecked balances and protections, the due process protections that are circumnavigated. I mean, as we know, it's called the shadow criminal court. It's where you can circumnavigate a person's due process without really those due process protections in place or enforced. You know, I if those due process protections were in place, yeah, you can start making some positive ground, but it is literally the wild, wild west, and, if you don't know how to play the game, you are going to get, destroyed. I think also when it comes to a father who's going to start saying, "Hey, I wanna go pro se," um, a lot of what I'm experiencing in my life as well as the followers that I talk to. And by the way, as when I started talking to other guys in the church, not just my church and other churches, their pastors saying, "Hey, we're seeing the similar thing, the silver bullet divorce thing," and they're saying, "Why is it coming? What's happening?" I interviewed a guy named David Edgington. He's a Presbyterian pastor. He has white knights and reviling. Uh, he has white knights and reviling. Listen, and he does it from a biblical perspective, and he actually talks about parenting. There's a whole chapter on that, and it's a and I get when my pastors got involved with what I was doing online, they led to say, "Wait a minute, we have to really think about what we're doing." And they apologized because they said, now that we know a little what's going on, we're going to change a little bit what we do and how we're processing when it comes to counseling. So if pastors or have this education, this knowledge of what parentalation is, how the court process works, they're going to be that much more equipped and have more tools in their ministerial belt, so to speak, to help their congregants and their members. But I think for me is that this idea that it's hopeless, that you're fighting an uphill battle that you'll never see a change. And I think it's grassroots efforts like yourself and little here, little there that are actually making a big difference. My contention, my position is that reason why I'm very passionate about this is because one is that the church, the church has the church basically they own in some ways the understanding of the institution of marriage. They say we know where it came from, and so when you start talking to them about marriage, start talking about divorce, and there's different perspectives of divorce. Like, there's should a person get divorced, even get divorced, and once you bring all that to the to the to the table, it forces pastors to deal with what's happening with these families, and it forces them to reach outside the walls and the doors of the church and go into the family court if need be, as to testify on behalf of someone or against someone, or really just to testify on the facts, if you will, want to be more accurate. And that's what I've seen where has been kind of like oh, okay, I have work to do here. I'm not just going to just let my sheep, if you will, just keep on going and have to go through the family court, get completely destroyed, and come back and check in with a phone call. Hey, how is hearing? How is everything going? I know you miss your kids. You know, they'll give them the religious platitudes of, well, we have to learn about forgiveness and what grace is, and no, 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 no. You're going to be get in the foxhole with me, and you need to know that your role is that much more important. Like if there's ever a time, and I was telling my pastor, if there's ever a time that a person needs a pastor to give them counsel, to give them help, to give them hope, encouragement, exhortation, it's in the one of the darkest chapters of the life of going through a divorce. And so so a lot of these pastors who have been, distanced, who have kind of said, well, that's the state and sphere and this is the church sphere. What they're realizing is like, no, when it comes to ideas of justice, you know, Bible is really clear. It has chock full of a lot of verses that talk about, do not deprive the fatherless, to do good, walk humbly before God, to do justice, to when it comes to unfair weights and measures. When it says that you are not to have differing rates. Well, differing rate would mean like she claims victimhood and she gets everything and no one hears the other side. Now, I will also say, because of my interactions more with fathers, is that I tend to make a biblical apologetic or defense, if you will, that though you have fathers and though you have mothers who do parent who are the alienating parents, from a biblical perspective, I tend to believe that the more culpability is or more responsibility is on the father and the father who does it. And the reason why, and I was just kind of running this with my pastor, was that in the Christian world or in the Christian faith, we believe of headship, not a tyrannical dictator, not misogyny, not abusive hyper patriarchy, but there is the responsibility and a father has to protect for his family, to lead them and to work with his wife, and there's roles there. If he's the one that's actually doing this evil, this perpetuating the psychological abuse on the family, I think that has you have a higher responsibility. You also have a higher culpability. Does that make sense? I mean, people say, "Well, you're being sexist." Like, first of all, I'm telling you, it's blame the guy first, more because of his role. Uh, but then at the same time, I remember when my ex-wife was going through a lactation consultant class, and she was telling me about. And I was reading the books too, and she was telling me all these things she was learning. But I remember one thing that she said to me that forever stuck with me, and this really breaks my heart when I hear that mothers are going through this. Is she said that they've discovered and like 20 years ago, I guess I don't know, but it's this thing where when a mother gives birth, that part of the DNA of that child has been found to be in the brain of that mother. Did you know that? No, it's Google it. It's crazy. And they found that part of that DNA is still with the mother. And so they were connecting, the mother's intuition with what the child is doing, that they
Yeah.
were trying to see like there's a biological truth to that. And I just thought that was just so amazing that no matter where that child will ever be, that child is still with their mother. And it's a beautiful thing if you think about it. But at the same time, to have a mother go through this, to see these mothers without children, those groups there, that's like that's a dark evil to do that to a mother because
And
now,
it's and
you know,
they're very much scrutinized. I think that I mean, I am convinced parental alienation is inflicted by both mothers and fathers. And
yes.
there used to be an idea that it was mostly fathers and who are the victims. But in my research, when I did my thesis, I had 260 applicants in 2 days, and it was a 60-40 split between men and women.
Oh,
60 men, 40
oh,
women, but that was significant. And I didn't interview 260 people, but just the fact that 260 people submitted and it was a 60-40 split is significant in
it's
how
crazy.
the roles have changed and the perspective of parental alienation has changed. But I will say that when it comes to mothers that are alienated, the scrutiny is much worse because other mothers instantly say, "You must have been really bad for your children to
Mm,
reject you," because they don't understand it. And so the pain that that mother endures when their
mm,
child rejects them is a double-edged sword because not only is it rejection from the child, but it's rejection from society that a mother must have been really bad for that child to not want to be part of her life.
ouch. Hmm.
It's
That's
very
crazy.
painful, and it doesn't downplay what a father goes through by any means, but it's a different level of scrutiny for moms.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I, as a professional and working in this space for all these years, I do see it from both sides, and the pain is the pain. It's there, you lose your child. So there's no forgiving anyone that does it by any means, and
Yeah.
it's just I understand what you're trying to say here.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
as we
for
wrap up, any
sorry, thank you for
final
clearing
thoughts
that
you
up for me. I
wanna
appreciate it.
share?
No, yes, one last thing would be that, um, the church, when pastors and leaders are able to understand what parental alienation is, they're then able to identify what's going on in a deeper and real sense, for their counseling to members. And that actually adds value to that time they're spent with pre-counseling as well as pre-marriage counseling, but also for actually interacting. It'll affect their sermons and how they want to talk about the role and responsibility they have as a family to stay tighter, locked in with the community. About the role of fathers and mothers and the importance that the community plays in regards to protecting the children, protecting their rights, protecting what a child is experiencing. And, I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. And, I really can't say thank you enough for letting me talk and hearing and saying my story. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so glad to have you, and I think you're right. It's critical, not only education for the church, but for educators themselves,
Mm,
schools, therapists, courts. I think education is the biggest piece that's lacking because of the counterintuitiveness of parental alienation. When a child comes forward and says, "My parent hurt me," a natural response from any human is to say, "Oh my gosh, what a monster. Let's immediately solve for that." But where they're missing is that children can be manipulated, and that's where the education piece is lacking for sure.
wow, heavy. Looking forward to, what you had to offer in regards to future podcasts and your interview, ease, and it's, uh, it's very encouraging, and I like that it helps give me the different perspectives, you know? I've been working with, the a state of Connecticut a little bit in regards to bringing fatherhood awareness and just seeing what's out there. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what impact that I can make to bring more awareness. And so I appreciate the encouragement you have with what you're doing.
Great. Thank you for being a guest on the Fractured Families podcast.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Fractured Families podcast.
We hope our conversations have provided you with support, understanding, and actionable insights to help you navigate your own family challenges.
Remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone in this.
If you have found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more families in need.
Connect with us on social media for additional resources and ways to get involved.
Remember to stay strong, stay connected, and keep fighting for the family bonds that matter the most.
Until next time, take care and stay resilient.